y'all, welcome back to Doug's Cars. These epaulets and this members only badge here tell you that I got something very special to bring to you. Something very 1980s. The 1987 Jeep Grand Wagoneer in maroon with a maroon leather and luggage fabric corduroy interior. They just don't make them like this anymore, but they made them for a long time. This is quintessentially 1980s, but this design came out in 1962. This was actually the 25th year that they made this vehicle in this design. And it wasn't the last year either. They made these until 1991. Very similar to this, but Chrysler purchased AMC in 1987. So this was the last year of production that AMC had control over this vehicle, and they were upgraded significantly, even though they looked the same by Chrysler. They actually changed the bark trim. They upgraded the air conditioning system, and a few other things, some improved rust proofing. This vehicle is fairly rust free, which is nice. There's a couple little spots, but otherwise, for having spent its life in North Carolina until recently, has been pretty rust free. This vehicle is named Wooderson, owned by a good friend of mine. Wooderson's been living at my house for a while now because Wooderson really likes certain repair shops, and there's one nearby, Sports Car Workshops, that you've seen probably in a lot of my videos. And Tylex and Christian and Mike, they love working on this. But anyway, they do get to work on this, and it's nearby. And as the owner, Reg, has told me many times, if something goes wrong, don't worry, they'll get to it next time because something else is going to break. And indeed, you don't want to get one of these that isn't sorted. Ask me how I know. And I've just been watching this through my friend's eyes. Also, because I've been brokering some of the deals of getting it fixed. But this has, around 140,000 miles on it. It was purchased out of Charlotte, North Carolina. I have the video of when we picked it up from the the owner that we got it from. And I'll go ahead and put that on the screen here. It wasn't lifted then. It had on-road tires, didn't have this brush guard. And so there's been a bunch of work done to it cosmetically. New suspension is always a good thing, especially on a vehicle with tired old suspension. But most of the things done to this vehicle have been totally mechanical. Basically, every seal under this hood has been replaced with a new seal. At countless sums. Reg sent me the list of everything he'd had done to this. It would take 15 minutes for me just to read the list, and you wouldn't be tuning in. So I'm not going to do that. But rest assured, every seal under this hood has been replaced with a new seal. And the cost has been astronomical. Far more than what this vehicle was purchased for, which I thought at the time was a pretty good deal because it was rust-free. And that is why I told him to buy this one, was because you can replace the mechanical stuff much easier than you can cut out rust and reinstall new metal. And he hasn't had to do that yet, which is great. So I think we're still friends. All that to say, this does look better than it did when we got it from this guy in Charlotte, who had been daily driving it. He was a high school teacher, and he had deferred all maintenance. I think he changed the oil in like 2 years, and that was it. So you can imagine on a 33-year-old truck, how many things just snowball. Now I drove it up here from Charlotte that night, and there were 2 Fireflies inside ball jars for headlights. So we got new headlights right away. Those fog lights don't work right now, but this brush guard is a factory option. It came on Cherokees, the 2-door version of this in the late 70s. So this actually mounts right up to this vehicle. If you want to see where this came from, I'll link to the video. We went to the Wagoneer graveyard in eastern North Carolina. That place was awesome. If you need Jeep parts from the 70s through the early 90s, even XJs, they have them. They will get them for you. They will dismount them from the vehicle and send them off to you, but we actually went down there and looked at it. So if you want to see the owner of this vehicle and you want to see us out on a jaunt down there in a modern car to pick up some pieces, check that out. So I'm going to show a couple of cool features of this vehicle, and then we'll take it for a drive because it really needs to be driven, to be experienced. It's a 1960s design, so it just doesn't do modern highways quite as well. This thing will probably cruise all day long at 55, but you'll be stopping every hour to fill it up with fuel because it gets about 11 miles to the gallon. But it'll do 55. 60, you're pushing it. And over 60, it's not a happy camper, and it's not because of this 2-inch lift and these off-road tires. I have these tires on my Range Rover. It easily does 70, 75 with the same tires, just in a slightly different size. So it's not that. But yeah, you don't want to do that in this car. I'm going to show you one of my favorite features of this car right now, and then we'll take a look at the interior. Welcome to the back of the SUV. This is this is the first really modern luxury off-roader. Range Rover came out in 1970, although we didn't get them in the US until 1987, unless it was a gray or black market vehicle. This, in the 60s, could have air conditioning, a stereo. It had independent front suspension when it first came out, even on the four-wheel drive model, and that was dropped. This has 2 live axles with regular leaf springs, cart springs for those of y'all in the UK. And this has something that my old Bronco had, and if you've ever had a full-size Bronco, you know what this is right now, but if you don't, I'm going to say, how do you open this tailgate? Is there a button down here? Nope, you're wrong. You need the keys. And once again, because this uses a GM column, it has a square key with an AMC logo on it for the ignition and a round key for all the doors and the glove box and the tailgate. You move this little cap out of the way, you put the key in, and you turn it, and the rear window slides down. Once the rear window's down, you reach inside and you unlatch it. And then it comes down and you see this beautifully, I mean, this is just really super plush, like 1970s shag carpeting almost, with these chrome strips. And of course there's a lot of stuff in here, cover, various and sundry bits for the vehicle, because yeah, they break. Did I mention that they break? But yeah, these slide strips are just perfect. You can slide things in and out even though it's got this thick heavy duty carpeting on it. It's a really cool place. It's even, you know, this is perfect for tailgating. Case of beer, some chips, dip, take your friends to the game. If only we could still see sporting events live. Maybe this summer we'll be able to. So yeah, this is a pretty good sized vehicle, but it's not big by today's SUV standards, that's for very sure. And it doesn't have a third row seat. You needed to actually get a station wagon for that back then. And if you want to see a vehicle with a third row seat, check out my video of the Buick Roadmaster Estate that Reg also owns, that's also currently stationed at my house. That has a third row seat. That was made in 1991. It was sold concurrently with this, one of the last vehicles made with wood paneling. This model stopped production in 1991 when that Buick came out. And even though this was made the same year, and you could buy these at the same time, the driving dynamics of that vehicle, despite being so much bigger, are way better. It's a 30-year newer design. This was designed in 1962 and came out. Cars changed so much. Fuel injection, anti-lock brakes. I mean, even airbags, although it doesn't really affect the driving dynamics, but the safety was much more paramount at that time. All that to say, this isn't really that big of a vehicle, even though when I was a kid, these things were huge. Stand this next to a Tahoe or a Suburban, it looks like it's the size of a small SUV. And yet it'll still seat 6. That's right, this has 2 bench seats. I don't want to sit in the middle in the front. It's only a lap belt. So if you hit the brakes hard or hit something, you're hitting the dash or probably the windshield. That wouldn't be fun. Well, let's get this closed up. I'll show you the inside and then we'll go for a drive. Flip that out of the way. And there she goes. By 1991, they'd actually equipped this with a rear window wiper. They managed to figure out how to do that with the power glass. And this doesn't have that. That's one of the things that Chrysler put on. They also installed an overhead console in the front with an outside temperature indicator and a compass and reading lamps and a couple other things like that that just upgraded the vehicle a bit for the times. They definitely did a good job with maintaining the luxury items that were needed for the time in a design that was so old. I didn't even think of those things then. To get leather power seats like this has, you'd have to get an Imperial or a Cadillac or something in 1963. But by 1987, they were fairly commonplace, and yeah, this definitely has them. Let's take a look. This vehicle is still a work in progress, but we've done quite a bit of work to it. One of the things that had to be done was this vent window, and I always like these. These are great, especially from days before air conditioning. You could turn these in and it would blow air in without having to open this main window. It is all in one piece, and we wanted to replace that and replace the window regulator. That's another video that I have on this. But I've never actually done a review of this vehicle, and that's sorely lacking, and it's something I can easily do because it's at my house, and I don't really have to borrow someone's car or go do something like that. So anyway, we've got fancy AccuSound by Jensen speakers. We've got power seat controls here that move the seats still. We've got fairly good instrumentation. There is no tachometer. Here's your rear window power switch, rear defroster, GM headlight switch, GM column, tilt column, and stock. And in the 80s, GM was huge on the all-in-one stock. So this does cruise control, wipe wash, turn signal obviously, and high beams. A lot of people got away from that, but hey, it's all there. And once you know how it works, they were on every car that GM made in the 80s, especially anything nice enough to have cruise control had this stock. And by the late 80s, pretty much everything was coming with cruise control. The only thing that really tells you this is an old car is this old-fashioned door handle, which goes this way instead of like in and out. And that's just the way things were then. It does also have a center opening glove box, which is here instead of over here. This does have just a cover to keep the dash fresh. There's actually a panel there that doesn't open. Glove box is here. And then these are the air conditioning vents down here, hanging on below the dash, which I always thought was weird. In 1967, you could get a Super Wagoneer that had the dash contain the vents up top. So why they went to that in the late 70s and then through 1991, I'll never know. Additionally, this panel goes from off to air conditioning, heat, and defrost. There's no vent, so you can't get flow through air, vent or econ like a lot of cars would have from the time period. You can put it definitely has air conditioning, and it does work, unlike my hoopties. This air conditioning functions, but yeah, there's no vent, which I always thought was odd. I don't know why you can't just have air blow through those, but for some reason Jeep decided they didn't want you to do that. All right, now I have my little camera. I'm able to show you the interior a little bit better than I can with the tripod and the external mic, which is good to have when it's super windy out like it is today. So again, as I mentioned, fairly comprehensive gauges, but no tack. You've got the Prindle up here, the needle's missing, I need to install that. Here's a better look at the HVAC controls, fan speed. These look very much like the ones in my XJ Cherokee, but there's no vent or bilev. There's a more modern radio, but it's not very good. Here's the vacuum actuated four-wheel drive, fog lights. So this vehicle has full-time four-wheel drive, select track in Jeep parlance. They used that for a long time. My XJ Cherokee back in high school had that, but it had the floor-mounted shifter like most of them did. So this doesn't. You switch it here, and then if you want to put it in 4-low, there's a shifter down here, down next to the sorry, it's springtime and there's a lot of pollen and junk from trees in the air, and yeah, it just got on the floor. Sorry, Reg, I'll keep your car in better shape soon. So yeah, and here's the glove box, which yeah, has parts in it, of course, because Jeep. And then they don't want you to forget that you've got the Grand Wagoneer. And while we're at it, the funky old school door handle and the power window and power lock switches, which, yeah, they look identical. They're labeled but not lit, and yeah, they're a little hard to figure out until you know what you're doing. And the problem is that this one now will lock but not unlock from the driver's door, which is weird because sometimes it'll lock when you put it in drive, which I don't think it's supposed to do. I don't think that was a thing in 1987. I think that came later, but you can't then unlock it from here. You can pull up on these and then that power unlock switch works. But yeah, again, more work to do. It's 33 years old. If I was, wait, I'm older than 33. Shoot, I was gonna make a joke about that. Sorry, car, I'm older than you are. And this is what I meant about the leather and luggage fabric or corduroy seats. And they've got that plush carpeting on the back too. And yeah, I mean, they're very comfortable. They're like a sofa. They're not like a modern car. They're not going to hold you in under cornering. This is not a Nürburgring car. Oh, you would, yeah, that would make an interesting Nürburgring video. I think I'd watch that one. And you know, the back seat has pretty good room. I can definitely sit back there. There's plenty of headroom, and wonder of wonders, the headliner is actually really good in this car. I think it's dropped down a little bit, but there's so much headroom in here and it looks fine. So it's got, you know, I think these came out of a Ford or a GM. Oh, they're not working. Oh well. If I turn this on, yeah, okay, then the lights come on the roof. But yeah, that reading lamp is a fairly stock part. There were a bunch of parts in this car that were kind of parts binned because AMC, and they were replaced, of course, when Chrysler took over building this vehicle and upgraded a lot of things. And I think the 88 through 91s are the ones that are really looked for because of the Chrysler investment. And you know, there's certainly nothing wrong with the 87s. This has got all the same equipment other than that overhead console and an upgraded AC system and that rear wiper, which are nice to have, but they're not necessary to run the vehicle. It's got the same engine. It's a 360 cubic inch AMC engine, and believe it or not, 144 horsepower is all you got out of those 5.9 liters. Let's take a look at the engine real quick so you can see what a carburetor looks like, because they don't exist anymore. This was also the last vehicle sold in the US, personal vehicle, with a carburetor in 1991. Everything else had fuel injection by then. I really wish this did. It would make it so much easier to start. All right. Oh, counterbalanced hood. Don't see those anymore either. So there is the 360 cubic inch AMC mill. You've got the heater box there. There's the air conditioning, obviously power steering, power brakes, cruise control, all those things added on to this engine because it wouldn't have had it originally. So there's obviously been work done here. Coil, plug, wires, all those things are new. And they actually made this yellow, which is pretty cool. But it's just, that's a big piece of steel. And when you do this, that sounds like a big piece of steel. That'll wake up the neighbors. Sorry, neighbors. All right, let's get this thing out of the parking deck here and on down the road. Give a little gas, starts right up. Sounds good though. So, yeah, let's go for a drive in the Wagoneer. It's getting hot in that members only jacket, y'all. I had to take it off and turn on the AC, which, despite blowing on your knees because of where the outlets are located, is cold. Like instant cold. That giant compressor under the hood, instant cold. Still driving through the garage. It's pretty tall and the roof is low. I'm not hot dogging it through here. As we merge into the sun, man, I really like how this sounds. It just has a good engine note. I mean, it's a low revving, rumbly American V8. I just don't make them like that anymore. All American V8s now are supercharged, you know, crazy Corvette 220 mile an hour, you know, that just don't exist like they used to. Lazy, 4,500 RPM redline, all the torque in the world. I mean, this thing had 144 horsepower when it was new, but it had well over 250 foot-pounds of torques. And that'll tow stuff, which people did with this. I mean, you'd be the slowest person on the highway on-ramp, because you still are. I couldn't imagine towing 5,000 pounds with this, but it's got a tow package, and you could. Well, I mean, but just cruising along here on the road, I'm about to get on the highway, going 40 miles an hour. This is nice and comfy. It's a little noisy, but this is luxurious motoring at its finest at the time. I mean, this is, you had what amounts to a Cadillac, but with four-wheel drive. And that's common now. There's a lot of Cadillacs with four-wheel drive. I don't know how many SUVs they make, several. But not in 1987, not in 1977, not in 1967. This was a very unique and unusual vehicle. And it spawned all of these. I mean, look at the Range Rover. I obviously have a Range Rover. If you want to check out some Range Rover content, I'll link to that. But that came out years later, and I must say that despite the Range Rover coming out in 1970 and only being 7 years newer as a design, it is an easier vehicle to drive. And mine's a 94, but it also had a very long service life and came out in 1970, at least in the UK. This came out 7 years earlier. But by then they'd done four-wheel disc brakes, which makes a huge difference. And it's got coil springs instead of leaf springs, also makes a huge difference. I'm gonna hold up my toll tag here so I can get through this toll, and then we're going to merge onto the highway. And I do a 0 to 60 time, but I don't know if it'll do that. I don't know if I want to subject it to that stress. It's it'll obviously do 60. I'm making a joke, but it's not happy about it. I mean, let's face it, this thing is shaped like a Volvo having a bad hair day. And it's carrying around all this extra weight of, you know, axles and
picked up a whistle. I wonder if the window's up all the way. Yeah, it is. All right. So, all right, we're going 55. And again, it'll do this all day. I could sit and look at that hood ornament and drive across Kansas. And that's what people did with these. That's what they were for. But modern speed limits, 70, 75 miles an hour, you just don't have the acceleration. You don't have the brakes to keep up with that. This does have power front disc brakes, but they're probably this big. You know, I mean, it's got 15-inch wheels on it, so the brakes can only be but so large. And it's not a joy to drive, but it's fun to drive. There's a difference there, and I'll try to figure out how to explain that. It is fun to drive. I mean, you can imagine people are looking at me. There's not too many people out in one of these. And the ones that are out bring joy to people. And unless you're, you know, in Nantucket at the A&P by the ferry landing, you're not going to see these very often. There, it looks like an AMC dealership in 1986, but not here. There's just not that many of them around anymore because they got so rusty and they're a pain to keep repairs under cost on. I mean, they're definitely expensive vehicles to maintain, but people aren't going to be daily driving these. If you were, you better get one of those $80,000 ones from the folks in Texas at Wagoneer, which, having spent a lot of time with this vehicle and knowing all of its foibles and all the money that's gone into it, I would say that despite this being one of the hero vehicles of my childhood, the only way I would buy one is to get one of those restored ones from Wagoneer or one of those companies that's been gone through and has gotten fuel injection and, you know, modern stereo system. Of course, I could do all that myself, but it kind of nickels and dimes you to death. Whereas, you know, getting something that's fully restored, even though it doesn't seem old enough to need to be restored, to me, is the way to experience one of these without having to take out a second mortgage. Well, unfortunately, they cost that much to begin with. All right, another on-ramp coming up here. And the highway has like a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit, which is just perfect for Wooderson. Wooderson likes 45 to 55-mile-an-hour cruising. All right, the pedal is to the floor, 39, 40, signaling, 45, 50. All right, now it drops down to 45 zone. So we made it to 50 there. And I lost you. Lights on chime. So it has a 1980s GM door dinger as well. They are what they are. I appreciate them more than the buzzer thing that my 91 XJ Cherokee had, which was just obnoxious. So I hope you've enjoyed this little insight into what a Grand Wagoneer is. I've done work on this vehicle and I've put those videos up before, but I've really never had kind of a review of this, and I apologize for that. But now I have the time to do that, and I'm glad that I'm able to bring that to y'all. It's a rare sight these days, but 30 years ago they weren't that rare. They made about 15,000 a year, and you know, people kept them a long time and enjoyed them, and they're being restored now, and they kind of have a cult following, which is fantastic. They're really a cool car. I just wouldn't want to drive one every day in the current climate. In the 1980s, when everybody had bad brakes and carburetors, sure, you were king of the road back then, but now you really need some upgrades to make this drive like a modern vehicle, and whether or not that's worth it, it's up to you. Keeping something classic and original, there's something to be said for that. Those go for a lot of money at Barrett-Jackson. But then the people who do the resto mods and do the 69 Camaro with the LS swap, they make even more money. So it's up to the market to decide, I guess. But for now, this one's stock, other than a little lift. But need new springs anyway. So yeah, if you get a chance to drive one of these, go for it. It's an experience you won't forget. And you won't have in any new vehicle, ever. Not possible. It's not just because of the wood grain. So, once again, thanks y'all so much for watching Doug's Cars. I've had a bunch of people follow me recently and subscribe, and I'm so happy for you to do that. And if you haven't clicked that button, click it. I'll keep bringing more content, and more Range Rover content, more Jeep content, more awesome car content. Hope y'all stay safe out there. Thanks for watching Doug's Cars.